I just gutted my bedroom and master bathroom, if you want to call it that. And the things that I found in here have made me question whether or not a house like this that was severely water damaged could ever truly be safe to live in again without being completely demolished down to the ground and rebuilt. And that's actually what I'm considering doing. And if you've watched any of my build channel videos, you know I've spent a lot of time and money on this house. So that would be very painful for me to have to do. It all boils down to the way that we've built things for the past 100 years. We just built all these little pockets for things to grow in, and we can't do anything about it without ripping things totally apart and seeing what's going on inside. So now that I've ripped this part of the house completely apart, let's take a look at what I'm talking about, and I'll walk you through why I'm considering tearing down the entire house, except for the masonry walls and rebuilding from scratch. I want to start off here in the basement, and I'm standing directly underneath the bedroom, and let's take a look at what's going on with the framing here. First off, you can see on these joists, I believe that to be old dead mold spores, all right? It's this black fuzz that comes off very easily, oftentimes with a vacuum. I also think this is a type of white mold up here. I don't know the names of them. And they're just all over pretty much all of my joists, okay? This house has had multiple serious types of water damage, some of which I've learned about from the neighbors and some of which I've learned about from construction. The first huge problem it had was standing water in the basement. It was said to have had 3 feet of standing water in the basement for years. Even after that standing water was handled and the sump pump got going again when the flippers bought the house, it still had the sump pit here. It was wide open. You can see I've got some new concrete here. Well, I jackhammered out the whole pit and I dug a big hole, carried all the dirt out, and installed a new covered pit. So it probably doesn't come as a huge surprise that this part of the house had the worst mold on the joists and on the subfloor above. Now, throughout my remodel process, I've been taking the subfloor out largely because I know that there's a bunch of mold spores in it. You can see some of them, and you could also smell it like crazy when I ripped it up, as well as the hardwood floor on top, which had its tar paper, which was a nice trap once the mold got in there. It also just smelled so very musty. Now, I should have known it had a serious water problem when I bought it. Look at these stairs. That first 3 feet tracks right on with what the neighbors said. Rotten out. Moldy. But when I bought the house, I didn't know mold was a big deal. Even if you had told me the house had water damage, I wouldn't have cared. I would have bought it anyways because it's like, well, it doesn't now. So I've gone through different parts of it already, and I've sistered old joists, and I've put in new subfloor. And the musty smell in the house has definitely gone way down. And I imagine if we did another air mold test, that would also show that the mold levels have gone down. But sadly, when I did other areas of my house, like this living room here, I was like every other contractor. I didn't understand the problem with mold. So you can see it's still all over my joists, and I even sandwiched in some new ones with the mold still on them. And this comes to the first real reason why it's going to be very hard for you to ever truly have a mold-free house again after you've got a bad mold problem. Contractors just don't understand the level of removal that needs to happen to get the mold out. All of these joists here should have been either ripped out or they should have been sanded down and then treated to kill the mold so that there was no visible spores left on the surface. Now I've sandwiched a bunch of them, and yeah, that's not great. There's definitely a good amount of mold trapped in there. But if it were just that, I think I could probably live knowing that there's some mold between my joists that's dead. After all, dead mold is not nearly as dangerous as a live mold. But what you do need to know is that dead mold is still dangerous to your health. In fact, it has a lot of the same effects that live mold has. They're just not as bad because it's no longer as strong of a precedent. So some types of mold still produce mycotoxins. Those spores are still going to get in the air and they're going to get into your lungs. They're going to get on your saliva. You're going to swallow them. So while the moisture problem is fixed, the house is not all good just because the mold has died because there's no water in it. And that's where my house is. All this wood is nice and dry. You can see on my dehumidifier, 30%. This is a nice dry basement now. But the extent of this damage is just staggering. This leads me to the next part. We're gonna take a look at this, then we're gonna go upstairs. Look at this joist. It's gone, all right? I don't know how well you can tell, but that's completely disintegrated. You can see the termites were here. In the Midwest, the termites will not be in your house unless there's a moisture problem, from my experience. You can see this dirt trail down the wall. That was probably the termites carrying all their stuff around. And then we get up to here, guys. This just baffled me, blew my mind. Look at this board. It is gone, completely gone. Look at the ceiling above. It is rotten, it is moldy. And then look what the contractors did. The joist ends over the wall, guys. Instead of ripping it out and replacing it like they should have, they just bolt the new joist on. I honestly think that was harder than just replacing it. The floor spans over the top, so they wouldn't have needed to jack anything up. They just need to take the old one out, put the new one in. And all that subfloor up there, it needs to go. It's got to go. You can't leave all that moldy, nasty stuff in there. That's right over the bed where I used to sleep. And no wonder when I put out my mold tests on the bed, I tested positive for mold. I was sleeping 6 feet away from that. Now it's all dead. It may be having even a very minor to no effect on me, but it's still there. And you don't want that in your house. And I keep hearing people say, well, you can't just see mold. You have to test for it. It's like, okay, well, tell that to Moses when he's writing the book of Leviticus and they're giving their treatment for mildew. I don't think they were swabbing the mildew and sending it off to a lab, all right? They're talking about mold there. And so in the same way that they could look at mold and say, that's mold, we can look at mold and say, that's probably mold too. And if you haven't done any, guys, sending tests off to the lab to see what type of mold it is or if it's mold is expensive. To give you an idea of what mold testing costs, the ERMI test is like $300 if you do it yourself and just collect the sample and send it off. So you're not going to just go around your house swabbing everything and sending it off to a lab. It's too expensive. A good rule of thumb, I think, is if it looks water damaged and it's got any type of surface discoloration on it that's not just like a dried watermark, you need to rip it out and it needs to be replaced. How they used to build way in the past with stone and with timbers, they didn't have these wall cavities and these floor cavities where everything could get wet, stay wet, and you not know about it. But that's how we've built since the mid-1800s. But it hasn't gotten really bad for mold until about the last 50 years because we started requiring insulation and everything, and we started using completely synthetic products. The only thing that's natural in our houses anymore are the wood studs that they're built from. I'm not against energy codes, I'm not against insulation, but I am against houses that don't dry. As I ripped into the shower, which sat right here, I found mold surrounding all of it. It was all in the wall that was right here. You can see it's definitely had a little bit more moisture down here. You can see all the way over to here. I mean, is that coming from the roof? I don't know. But you take a look at the floor in here. I mean, they knew there was a problem. They didn't replace this just for fun. But again, you come into the wall over here. You can see the remnants of it. I've tried to vacuum as much of it out as I can. You look at that drywall. I already got the worst of it. All these areas were packed full with like big black mold colonies. I found it over here in the hallway. I found it here in the hallway. I found it quite badly tucked behind this cabinet in the kitchen. I cut it out. Even though this house is dry, even though it's all been covered up and lots of the moldy material has probably even been removed, it's everywhere. And that leads me to where I'm at with this house. I think I've got to take the entire house down except for the masonry shell. Masonry shell will last another 100 years easily, and I'm not going to waste that. But this house has been infiltrated by just way too much water. It's had roofs in the leak, I can tell. That's what that rot over in the bedroom floor is. It was also in the wall up above when I was doing the upstairs bedroom, but I didn't know anything about mold then. I wasn't worried about it. It's had big leaks in the bathroom. You could tell that. That's why we have new floors in the bathroom and why all of the walls still have mold in them. And it had a huge moisture problem in the basement, which has infiltrated everything on the first floor in the framing and in the subfloors. So even though I've spent hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars, I'm probably going to take all this down. I'll keep my nice fireplace and I'll carefully remove my handcrafted trim and try to preserve the expensive materials I've used. A theme that you will see pop up if you start listening to stories of people who have gone through a lot of mold remediation is I had to have the mold company come back 2, 3, even 4 times to remediate because there was still mold hiding. And that's because the way we build with the cavities and the lack of understanding, it's very hard to truly get the mold out of our houses. But it can be done. To remediate mold, you need to rip it all out, all right? You can't just spray something in there and call it good. Wood needs to be exposed for it to be able to be dried and have the mold removed off of it. I'm not at all saying that your house needs to be destroyed like this, but a house like this that went 20, 30 years with moisture problems, it does. There's no fixing that. It's got to be everywhere. And so I wish I had started here, but this is how my journey has gone, and I'm okay with it. I am not at all saying that all houses need to be torn down when they get a leak. There would be no houses left standing. But a house like this that went through decades of neglect, it probably does. I don't think if I had bought this house in the condition that it was a year before I bought it, I would have considered anything else. But it had all been covered up and I didn't know any better. Like most people, like most contractors. The way we build needs to change. And as I rebuild this house, I am going to war against one, drywall. I hate drywall. You are not going to see drywall in this house. Two, cavities. Wall cavities, floor cavities, ceiling cavities. I hate cavities. They allow problems to progress without you knowing, and you can't access your electrical, your plumbing, or anything really. They also prevent things from drying. If I do this, guys, I will probably lose at least $100,000 on this house when I sell it. This is not my forever house, but I want to build it. I want to do this research for myself. I want to learn these things, and I want to be able to pass them on. And hopefully, I can make up for some of it through my YouTube channels. If you want to watch as I rebuild this house the healthy way, I will link my channel down below. It's called Lumberjack Build. I've got the full progression of everything I've done to it so far on there. Warning, I knew absolutely nothing about building science or healthy homes when I started, and this project is what got me onto it. You can even watch me install insulation with the vapor barriers going the wrong way and other new mistakes. But remember, unless your house sat derelict for 30 years and raccoons lived in it and it was an absolute disaster, you probably don't need to rip it down. This is kind of an unusual instance. Thanks for watching, guys. And if you like this video, you'll probably like the one I'm popping up on the screen. Check it out next.